this video, I am going to be doing something a little different. Basically, I'm just going to drink this and explore some of the carbonation sounds, and then basically just give kind of a review or just talk about the movie Annabelle, which I think came out on Friday, and I saw it a couple days ago. So I've been thinking about it today, and so I figured I'd just give a little bit of a review in case people were thinking about going to see it, or if you have seen it, just something to think about that movie. And I'll try and avoid spoilers, although, I mean, for a horror movie like that, you pretty much know what's going to happen for the most part, so you can't really ruin it. But nonetheless, I will try and avoid that, and I won't give away the ending or anything, but I may talk about some somewhat specific things from the film. So if you're one of those people who just, is really uptight about spoilers for whatever reason, then you may not want to listen, but I don't think I'll really ruin anything for anyone. Carbonation sounds are one of my favorite ASMR triggers. So I like to incorporate that when I can. And I know the brightness in here keeps fluctuating, but I don't have anything to do with that. It's just where I live. The cloud cover keeps changing pretty rapidly, so it's not something I'm doing since I'm reviewing a horror film or whatever. It's just a coincidence. Okay, so anyways, I went to see the film Annabelle a couple days ago, and obviously, if you've seen The Conjuring, which I thought was great and was made by the same filmmaker and production company and all that as the Insidious movies, which I also liked. So a lot of that mode of production carries over to Annabelle, and obviously in and of itself it is kind of a spin-off of The Conjuring, as if you've seen that movie, it starts out with kind of a prologue that involves the characters, I guess, solving the Annabelle case, which I guess it's all pretty loosely based on real things that happened with this doll, which in reality is like a Raggedy Ann type of doll, but in the film she's kind of a porcelain or some just really creepy looking doll. And anyways, if you've seen The Conjuring or the Insidious films, the horror atmosphere is really strong in those. Just from the sound design to the creepy sets and just the lighting and the color, it's all really kind of weird, creepy, hellish. It's very highly stylized. Just a very strong horror atmosphere that I think a lot of people, including myself, responded to pretty strongly. But it still has all of the, it's very event-based. The characters aren't fleshed out that much. There's not really a lot of character development, but it's driven by, a lot of, kind of episodic, just one thing after another. So they're very exciting. And I think that the Annabelle film, the atmosphere, I think it had a different director, but the atmosphere was not as strong and stylized in this film. But I think just the chain of events and the causality is a lot more clear, almost more reminiscent of, if you've seen those, I used to watch them a lot, like The Haunting, it's a television show. I think it comes on Biography or something. Sometimes similar shows are on Sci-Fi and other networks, but it's usually an hour spot that just follows like a family and their experience in a haunted house. And structurally, it was actually a bit more like that. So the plot was, and the way it was handled. So I found that I could appreciate that quite a bit. So if you like those types of shows, which I do, you'll see, I think, some clear homage to that as well. But with the addition of horror film staples, like, they're maybe more so than Insidious or The Conjuring. There are some pretty good, there are some pretty good startles in this film. I think that's something that it does do quite well. It will keep you on your feet because it's relentless about just intense, suspenseful moments and like startle effects. I think in that way it sort of fills in where those other films had that overwhelming, horrific atmosphere. It kind of fills that with some more startles and some pretty good, there are a couple, well, I don't want to give it away, but very early on in the film there are some pretty unique and interesting moments visually, with some really creepy long takes and things like that that really are effective in the whole suspense thing and are pretty impressive, but also just the whole trend in horror films where you kind of have to like scan the frame because there could be something anywhere just popping out. There's a ton of that in this one too, which is another place where I think it kind of made up for its where it lacked in other places. In that also definitely kept it pretty exciting. And if you have seen it, you know what I'm talking about, where there are several shots where you kind of aren't really cued to see anything until you notice it and something happens, and like, you know, it's very effective. And that's something I thought it did pretty well. But overall, it's certainly not innovative or even as dynamic in the way that The Conjuring and Insidious are. Just some of the elements of it seem a little more half-baked. The acting is a little subpar at parts, but that's another horror staple. The two main characters are not stars in any way, as in those other films either, but they're younger, and I think that had a added appeal as well, because I guess they were just supposed to be early 20s or whatever. But anyways, it's not terrifying, it's not innovative, it's not amazing, but in the canon of its offshoots, the films I've been talking about, it's, it's not Troll 4, it's not any of the Troll, it's not one of those terrible sequels. I'd say it still is a meaningful member of a pretty strong current horror film canon that, if there's a Conjuring 2, I'm sure I'll see that. Whereas, I don't know what Paranormal Activity they're on. I haven't gone to see any of those since the first one. I mean, I just can't see that happening. So, I'll also say the ending is, it gets a little weaker as it goes on, but the suspense is building. It's not a total, it's not a total letdown. There are, some pretty creepy moments throughout, and there are some interesting choices, I think, with how they visually show some of the entities, and how they explain the force behind the doll's possession, that I think they're pretty cool and versatile, and leave them some room to kind of like in The Conjuring and Insidious, to have different kinds of ghost-like entities pop up, so it's not just one thing that is threatening them, which something I find kind of weakens certain films, but you know, they're I think it's creepy and effective in more than one way, and threatening, and I think that's one of its strengths. So, I mean, if you live in a town where a movie ticket is only $7 or whatever, then it's definitely worth it. Now, if you're gonna go out and go to the IMAX and take out your girlfriend or whatever, spend $30, well, then you might want to wait and watch it at a dollar theater or DVD. Although I'm glad I saw it at the theater in general, because as with all those films, the soundtrack is very, it can be pretty overwhelming at times, and it's kind of the primary cue for stuff happening. But I'd say that this one actually, sound was a big and just more sonic atmosphere than visual atmosphere was a big motif and stuff in this one. The diegetic sound kind of was used in a way that was a little different. There were some more than just like little creepy voices and creepy knocks and noises and things were used a little bit differently to, I think, greater effect. And so that kind of immersive experience that a large movie theater with, a fuller sound system really, I think, experience helped a lot for that, because there are definitely a few pretty fun parts in the film. So, it's not The Conjuring, but it isn't supposed to be. So it's definitely it's the best horror film that I've seen at the theater in a while. So if you're into that sort of thing, especially with Halloween coming up, I'd go see it. In hindsight, I think I did a pretty good job of not giving anything away, but I feel like that may have made me kind of ramble more than say anything specific. that's only because there are some pretty fun, specific things in it that I think if you like horror films, that you will probably enjoy. But as I said, overall, the atmosphere of like creepy horror is not as overwhelming as something like Insidious or even The Conjuring, and there's a bit more of a change in setting and moving around in that, so I think that's part of the reason. But in some ways it makes up for that and is equally effective in some ways, and probably for some people some pretty terrifying parts. I know that it's got not such great ratings so far from just critics that I've seen, but I mean, oftentimes film critics are full of shit, so you really should, either read an in-depth review or listen to me or whatever before you make that choice. And the rule I go by is, if the people who made a certain film, if you liked kind of stuff in that architectural group, then you will probably like or see something good in that. And since I liked The Conjuring and Insidious, I think, going into it with that mindset, I also liked the Annabelle film, and I think that would go for most people. Overall, I guess I would give it maybe a 7 out of 10. I know that it's not really a standardized or objective way of rating something, but I thought it was, good. It was pretty good. It was great in some ways, and it was in some ways. So I'd say it's good. Probably when 2014 comes to a close, I'm sure it'll be in the top 5 horror films that, at least of those that are commercially prominent, because you never know if something in Indonesia or some independent film that you'll never see is better, but definitely better than some of the shit that just as many people will